Is this thing on and going? Yep. Are we off and running? Anyone here? Yep. All good. We might as well kick off then. When you do these sorts of things, you're generally supposed to start with a joke, but I don't know any jokes, so that could be a bit of an issue. But you might have heard there was a bit of a tragedy early this morning. There was Tony Abbott, Bill Shorten and Chris Cleaver all heading to the airport to go away. Giant accident. Bang. All killed. It's shocking. So anyway, they've all gone up to the Celestial Hotel, 3 of them. So Tony Abbott's first, he goes up to sign in the Celestial Hotel, so the angel comes up and says, okay, this angel will take you up to your room, Tony, no problem. So going up the stairs to the Celestial Hotel, opens the door, and here in the room is this it's pretty seedy looking room, and there's an aged woman lying on the bed there, naked, and she's not in the best state, you know, the boobs are down to here, shocking face, hardly any hair, nearly bald. Anyway, the angel look up at Tony Abbott, he looks in the book and he says, Tony Abbott, all your life you've been a liar and cheat, here's where you stay for all eternity. Bang, shuts the door. Geez, not looking too good. So anyway, Bill Shorten's next, same story, takes him up. Terrible looking woman on the bed, shocking view from the room, cranky bed. All your life you've been a liar and a cheat, here's where you'll stay for all eternity. So anyway, Cleaver's looking a bit worried about this, but anyway, off they go up to Cleaver's room in the Celestial Hotel, opens the door, absolutely 10 out of 10 lady lying on the bed, completely naked, not a mark on this person, just absolutely beautiful. Quite a nice looking room, Cleaver's in there, so the angel reads out the book. Actually, it was Al McPherson that was lying on the bed. He's done all right. So anyway, the angel reads out in the book and he says, Al McPherson, all your life you've been a liar and a cheat. Anyway, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I only come up because I said there was a free sausage and a Coke. But and that was another story because Giles rang me up tonight and about 4:30 in Marimbula and said, how you going, Bushy? You're travelling all right? And I went, yeah, I'm good. I'm just had a big day. I'm just lying down in bed, watch a bit of TV. And he said, what? And I said, oh, well, I'm right for tomorrow, you know, Friday night, no problem. You know, we'll be there. And he said, it's not Friday night, it's tonight. So, yeah, that was a bit of an issue. So I thought best get in the car and go. So sorry about being a bit late, but these things happen. Since we're supposed to be talking about fishing, I suppose I should. I just grabbed a bit of gear because Chris has obviously told you all how to catch 1 million jewfish, but he won't tell me because I can't catch them. But what I can catch is bream and flatties and stuff. They're a lot easier than jewies, trust me. So I just grabbed a few rods that were sitting there from the last time I went fishing down to Cooter. Normally I take about 9 rods rigged, and I think these days the way that the estuary stuff's gone, if you're fair dinkum about catching them, it's a lot tougher than it was. And a lot of the fish are a bit more educated. A lot of guys are letting them go now, which a lot of you people probably are too. But when you let a black bream go, especially a black one, when they stay in the estuary and don't go anywhere, they're pretty smart and it's harder to catch them the second time. So, I mean, I'm getting pretty old. When we first started, we had a bunch of dirty big hard bodies and we'd go out there and crank them around the place and catch a few fish. Those days are pretty much gone. And what I find is I generally have about 9 sets of gear rigged on the boat. And I reckon the rigged part of it's the important bit because I'm pretty lazy, really, I'm a lazy bloke. So you've got one rod rigged up and you might have a vibe on it or whatever and you throw a vibe around a bit and then you think, oh, geez, a bit of shallow flat here. I think I saw a bream going over that flat. I wouldn't mind a little hard body to throw out there. Where is one? So you've got to look for one, find it, tie it on, or else you go, oh, I can't be bothered, I'll just go out in deeper water and put the vibe again. So you sort of add that up a little bit. If you've got quite a few outfits, even these 4 here, I've got a bent minnow on that one. What have we got on that one? There's a vibe on that one, and probably the one I catch the most fish on is just a 100mm wriggler on there. That's rigged, and then a little hard body. And I do have, normally when I'm down there, I have another plastics rod rigged just with a little flick bait with an unweighted worm hook on it, or just an unweighted jig hook, and a couple of other different hard bodies. So there'll be at least 2 or 3 plastics and then the vibe and then the hard body. So basically what you can do is that's sitting in the boat, you just grab it and go whooshka, and I'm the world's most impatient person, so you might have 4 casts on that. If that doesn't work, it's just a matter of putting it down, picking the other one up. And look, if you get the right thing in front of the fish in the right place, you're halfway there. You know, you might get on the flat and put the little hard body out there, throw it out and just slow crank it back or do the jerk and get a fish. And one thing I have noticed with bream, if you can knock one over doing a certain thing, that's not going to be the end of the story. You can knock a whole lot over doing that same thing. So just having all your gear rigged and ready, I think's, you know, super important. Probably just some of the real basic stuff. I mean, I've changed what I do really in the last few years. Nearly all the tackle and lures I use, either I use different ones or I fish them differently to what I used to. There's no doubt about that. You probably laugh at this one because this is my 100mm wriggler. That's a wasabi one. That's just come straight off the boat. That's just rigged up with, that's the leader knot about there. So you've got about 2 rod lengths worth of 4-pound leader. That's only 1.5 grams head rigged up on this one. And then just 3-pound braid, the Power Pro. I'm probably a bit different to some people. I like the dark stuff. It's harder to see, but I reckon it's a lot harder for the fish to see as well. And I've just noticed over time that the duller line really does make a hell of a difference to your catch, in my opinion. I guess it probably doesn't if you're fishing places where it's not all that clear. But a lot of the water we fish at home, if we're in a bit of a drought situation, say at Malakuta, it makes a hell of a difference. And this setup here, I'm generally fishing in reasonably shallow water. I might fish from 1 metre to 2 metres with this head, and it's a pretty fast retrieve, a pretty fast jerk on the lure. It's not really, I haven't really written too much about that retrieve because it's not something a lot of people do, but basically with the light head you pitch it out with the breeze, you're just drifting with the boat. As soon as it hits, you don't let it go anywhere, don't let it go down even an inch, just give it a quick jerk. And the amount of times that you'll hook a fish on that first splash, it's uncanny, especially if you're fishing anywhere 1 metre, 1.5 metres. A lot of times the bream just key in on the splash. And this type gear, I'm not really throwing it at structure all that much. I'm just finding good feeding area, which I guess you can only do by a bit of trial and error. A lot of times if it's clear, I just float over flats and you can soon see a real good one because it's just got all sorts of bits of shell and all sorts of stuff just lying there. It'll be all just glittering white with shell. And if you find that sort of spot, that's really where you're going to get your bream. Some of the other muddier areas are not as good. But anyway, you just drift, throw that thing out as hard as you can, far as you can. Give it the pretty big hoik so that it darts and then just drop it. Let it go down but not far, and then you give it another hoik and keep going. It's not really like when we started fishing these wrigglers, and you can still do it with a heavy head, let it go right down the bottom and just do the bottom hop. But this stuff's a little bit different and it's a bit more radical, but I think it's just a reaction bite the whole way through, and when they see it, they don't have much of a choice. They've either got to eat it or not. And the good thing about this technique too is you're not really waiting to look for a bite on the line, a twitch or anything. You just go and whoosh like that, and the next twitch will just go thud. And I suppose I've got 9,000 different rods at home, but this one, Ian Miller's not hiding anywhere here, is he? No. This one's just a Bushy whiting rod with about 6 inches chopped off the butt with a hacksaw. I love doing that to Ian. He's a good man, but you have to, well, especially when I go fishing. And the good thing was, since he's not here, I can slag him off pretty good. We went down to Kuta the other day when the pre-fish was on, and we had one bit of a session where this technique absolutely went well, or it went well for some of us, let's say. And Ian had the $1 million Ian Miller, and I had the, well, it was designed by Ian Miller till I cut 6 inches off the butt. So Ian really loved it every time I went thud, and yeah, it was pretty good. And a couple of my mates watched me fish this stuff, and there's a bit of a flat spot in there if you look really hard. So one of my mates, we had one day when we were weighing a few, and he kept looking at it and going, that rod's got a bit of a flat spot in it. So I mentioned to Ian that it had a bit of a flat spot, and I mentioned it quite a lot actually when the fish were on the end of it. But yeah, lucky he's not here or he'd be going crook. So that's just one sort of outfit, and I don't mess with that one. I just leave that one exactly like it is, so I don't have to change it around. We call that technique boogering. It's a bit more, I mean, it's nothing new, but it's just something that's a bit more aggressive than what most people do. And it's a killer technique on the day when it works. It doesn't work all the time, mind you, but when it does work, it works really, really well. It's a pretty good comp technique too, because both of you can use it. And if you're just blowing with the breeze and you're out away from the shallows when everyone's stirred them all up and, you know, couple of hours into a comp, whenever all the good bits have been done, if you just go out into that 1.5 metres, 2 metres, and just drift with the breeze, both of you can fish happily because you're not getting in each other's way. And it is a pretty deadly technique. The other thing I like about it too is you've got it's pretty strong gear really these days. 4-pound braid and the 3-pound braid probably breaks at 10 pound. And I use the number 2 hook. So when you're going through this boogering technique, when you do whack one, it's usually stuck straight through them really hard because you haven't had to finesse a bite or anything, it's just clunk. And the other thing is you can get them in pretty quick if you're in a comp because you can lean on them a bit with this gear. Because a lot of the other gear that everyone's using now, especially in comps, is pretty light. And you go to the other extreme and that's just a little hard body outfit. That's actually one that you all should buy because it's the new Bushy rod. But we finally got Ian to make a really light hard body rod because hard body's all the go these days. Everyone loves hard bodies. And that is a cracking rod, especially for not much dollars. And that one's just rigged with straight 1 kilo. So it's sort of the opposite of what we're doing with the braid and the other leader. I guess in the comps, most of you will be using a similar thing. And 1 kilo sounds pretty light, but when you're on the flat, it's no drama to catch the fish, and you can actually pull, you know, pretty hard with that. It's pretty hard to break through the rod. I guess these days you're always looking for a little edge, so with the 1 kilo you can throw it a long way, and I find it works really well on the the slow wind. You just wind them on, and I've always poo-pooed it a bit for the black brim. I know it works really well on the yellowfin brim, but down south I've been always more of I would say jerker, but that's probably pretty correct. More of a twitcher on the lures, I suppose, if you want to put it that way. And just stopping the lure so the black brim can come and eat it, because that is still a good trick with them. But down at Cooter, a lot of the guys that come from up this part of the world and go in the comps, they manage to wind on a hell of a lot of good yellowfin brim in the comps just by hold the rod up, steady wind. That works well. So I thought I'll better get with that technique a bit. So started doing that a couple of years ago, really, with trying to wind on the yellowfin brim, but I had a lot of trouble with it because the big black brim kept bloody grabbing hold of the thing as well. So that did surprise me a little bit, but it's definitely a good technique on the blacks as well. So you've got a couple of extremes there, I suppose, and everyone's talking these days about 1 kilo and stuff being pretty mandatory in the comps, and I think it is. It's just, if you look at the guys that are winning a lot of the time, if it's flats fishing, the 1 kilo is definitely good. Not for everything, but it is good, especially if the fish are a little bit switched off. We'll go back to a bit of surface stuff. The surface stuff, I do like the braid. That's one of the few times I use a bit of brighter braid, probably because I got it for nothing. I actually still like the other stuff. I'm not big on putting the bright braid over the top of fish on the surface, but that's just a bent minnow. A lot of you be onto that sort of technique. That's just an OSP bent minnow, and I love them. They're a really good lure. Work well on the surface. You can throw them a long way, and it's one sort of style of fishing where you can actually get stuck into the fish. That's 6-pound floating leader. The floating leader, I think, does help a little bit when you're doing it. And the other thing that I reckon helps a fair bit, another plug for the Bushy rods, that's a pretty clunky rod, I suppose, the long cast rod compared to some of the lighter stuff that we use, on the 1 kilo. But I find that rod's great for this job because, one, it throws a hell of a long way, and it really does throw a long way. And the other part to it is when you fish the bent minnow, you can fish it quite gently when it's really calm, but I find when it's a fair bit of breeze, the bent minnow, and you get it overcast and a fair bit of breeze over the flat, I really like to hit it hard, only a short jab with the rod, but you really want to make it kick the nose down, kick the tail up and splash a bit. Even though it's not going a long way in a hurry, you get that little bit of an aggressive dart, and flash, and it goes under a little bit, and then you let it come up and do the same thing. And on the end of a long cast, a rod with a little bit of clunk in the tip, something that really shifts the lure, is very, very good. I know I fish with Righty a fair bit, and Righty generally kicks my ass on the brim. He's better than I am, but on the surface I can give him a bit of a touch-up a lot of the time, because until now anyway, he's always used more of the really soft style rods that he uses for the hard body, except you can't keep doing it forever now. He's using something with a bit more tip, so I could have a few issues now. But again, with this technique, anyone who hasn't done it much, it is diabolically effective, the bent minnow. I don't really know why. Part of it, I think, is that it's a sort of a sideways lure with the eyes on the sides, so that when it lies there, the brim come up underneath it, and they think it's dead set on the side. They can see that eye on the side, and they're not dumb. And you can watch them a lot of times just looking at the lure before they'll bite it. And there's not much that's a minnow type thing that lies on its side like that, that's not half stuffed. And brim, if there's one thing about brim, they're cagey, sneaky things, but if they ever think that things are on their terms, they'll have a decent crack. And if they see that bent minnow just lying there on the top after it's done a bit of a half-assed twitch, they'll crunch it. So yeah, it's a very good technique, the bent minnow stuff. I've got some other stuff here in the box too, the bent minnow box. If anyone later on wants to come and have a look at some of the actual stuff, this is just the gear I take when I'm pinch a chair. Back's not good enough to go down there and get up again too many times. As I say, that's an OSP one. There's other ones that work pretty good. That's just the surface box, but there's also some counterfeit big Bushy ones in there that I like. There's some big ones in there. Anyone can have a look at a bit of that stuff. We don't sell them or anything. I don't like copying other people's lures too much, but counterfeiting a few for the Bushy boxes, no problem. It's all right. I don't know what I'm talking about here, but I'll just keep talking. Now, what else? That's just a bit of a vibe setup. I know a lot of you will be vibe fishing. Actually, we should have a bit of stuff to throw on the YouTube. We did a bit of stuff down at Malakuta the other day on vibing. None of it's super big deal. It's just a few of the little tricks. With the vibing, I suppose mostly when I'm fishing for yellowfins, for black brim more than yellowfin. We catch both, but definitely on the black brim, you don't want to work the vibe too hard. If I take someone who's good at catching yellowfin brim, usually they struggle a little bit for a start on the black brim because they work the lure a bit hard. And if you're anywhere in really clear water and you can watch what brim are doing with your lures, it's pretty interesting. I mean, there's not much difference between something that makes them bite it or something that makes them run away. And if you've got a lure and you drop it on the bottom like a vibe and you give it a real hard tweak and a brim's gone over to have a look at it and it's a black brim and you go, vrr, I can tell you what it's going to do. It's going to go, see you later. It ain't going to bite that lure. And not only isn't it going to bite it, it's going to run away because that's what happens. It might come back and have another look, but it'll run away. So mostly with the black brim, when you get it down there, you're only moving the rod tip. I reckon if you've got a good setup, you can actually count the amount of vibrations that come off the lure, whether it's 3 or 4 or whatever. And that's all I do on black brim pretty much, is 3 or 4 vibrations if you want. You can pick it up, it goes, brrrt, it's gone that far off the bottom, and then you drop it back on the bottom. And that'll bring them from far enough, but it won't scare the hell out of them. The other thing I do a fair bit if I'm fishing for black brim, which you can vary your retrieves a bit, I might do 3 or 4 lifts really small and really short amount of vibrations and drop it. And if you don't get one, I might give it one decent rip. So if there's a brim within a bigger area, they can feel that through the water from a long way, I'm pretty sure. So if you give it one, if you haven't got a bite in the first 3 or 4 lifts, doing it, just lightly, give it a couple of really hard rips and then go back to the light stuff, and then I might leave it on the bottom for a bit. And once you start mucking around with that, you find it's some days it's quite amazing. You do the couple of short lifts, nothing happens. You do a big rip, then you do a couple of more little tiny ones, and bang, you'll be on, and it'll happen again and again. So don't be too aggressive. Occasionally on other days, the really aggressive, retrieve does work too, especially with the yellows. They're a bit more aggressive. And more, everyone's doing just the straight wind with the vibes on the flat. That's pretty common now, just about everywhere, and it does work really well. But again, with Bream and stuff, doesn't work every day either. I don't think anything works every day. You've got to be just switched on and try different stuff just to see if it works. I guess the other thing with the vibes is I'm really fussy about the hooks, because on the end of a pretty decent cast, you got it, mostly the fish set the hooks by themselves. You haven't got much to do with it, because especially when you're doing a short lift, there's not much force involved, and you've got all that line out, so you're not really pulling on that hook. I mean, you can hold it in your hand, and someone could pull it from the other end. It's not going to stick into you. Usually the Bream set it themselves by biting it hard, so you've got to give them half a chance. As I say, I'm pretty lazy, but I do carry a little diamond stone, and some people change the hooks. Some of the comp guys change the hooks after every fish. Well, I'm not that keen, because I reckon that wastes too much time, and it's too expensive if you're not loaded. But I do get the diamond stone, and after every fish I'll give that a quick sharpen just by, I can show you actually. How clever is that? I didn't think of that, but I can show you. It's in that pocket. I know where it lives, and that's part of the deal, and it's on the end of a lanyard, so when I want it, I can get it. So all you're doing to sharpen that's hold on to one of the trebles, just give it one or two quick rubs. So that does two points. Then you revolve it around, do the other 2 points, go around, that's it. So you do that and then just feel it, and if you have trouble picking that vibe up out of the box with it sticking into your fingers, it's going to catch a fish. If you pick it up and you don't notice it's sharp, you ain't going to catch too many. So I reckon that's one thing with fishing the vibes, super important, is that, just stuck it in your finger. See, I was right. But the other part to that is, even me being a pretty disorganised person, when you're in the boat, you got to go, you don't think about it, you got to go, right, I want to sharpen it, bang. You don't think, I want to sharpen it, I wonder where my sharpening stone is. It's just little stuff like that with Bream that makes you, catches you more fish. You just got to know where stuff is. And on the other end of that, not that that's a big deal, but on the other end of that, I've got my little split ring pliers if I have to change a ring. So you just grab that out, and it's always in your hand. You don't have to mess around looking for it. Especially in comps, you just can't afford to waste time. While we're on that, just the other side's just got all the hooks and rings and whatever that you're going to need, so you don't have to go looking for them. All right. So I think I'll just grab it on for a bit, and then probably the main thing that we really want is I'll just shut up and you can ask some questions, because there'll be things that you want the answers to that I'll probably won't get round to covering. What else have I got here that I haven't talked about? Pretty much talked about most of it, haven't I? Well, I could wrap it on for you. We might as well have a few questions. It's going to be pretty late for you anyway. Yep.
When you're tying your hooks on jig heads or your lures and that, do you use a loop knot or do you just tie it?
Yeah, that's a good question. If anyone didn't hear, it was just when we tie the lures on, what do we use? Do we use a loop knot or not? It does depend. I rarely use a loop knot these days. With most of the hard bodies that you get, they've either got a split ring, or in the case of some of the jackals and some of the bit better lures, they've got a little bit better split ring. I actually go a step further than that, because I reckon it's pretty important. Pull that out. So if you have a look at, say, I like jackals, in Canada there's about 1,000 of them in there. And if you look at that, that's on the end of there. You can't see it from there, but if you come up later and have a look, that's a special split ring without being a split ring. It's just a wire attachment I make so that you can tie straight to that without having to use a loop knot. The split ring that's on most hard-bodied lures works, but I won't use them because you tie it on there. What does it do? After a while, it always works its way around to the split part, and you catch 25 bream on the thing, and then when you're in a comp, you get a good one, and it goes because it's been in the middle of that bloody sharp bit of the split ring. So I've just learnt the hard way. I just won't tie them on with that. So I go to all the trouble. If you look in that box, there's not too many that I haven't thrown the split ring away and put that different little attachment on there. So that means I can tie on just with a uni knot, which is not going to come undone, and it's quite strong. So I do that. What else? With the Vibe, which is that?
Do you ever use clips?
Clips? No, I won't use them because I've lost fish. Even these bent minnows, that one's still got the original clip on it because the bent minnow's a bit tricky. If you mess with the bent minnow the slightest amount, the bent minnow won't work anymore. Even with that little tiny clip on there, the guy that invented it's meant that clip to be there because it just holds the head right for when you flick it. It'll pick the water up and dive down that little bit. If you take that off, it's not quite as good. And the other part to that too with the bent minnow is I always try and make my lead have the same stuff and exactly the same length because that way when you get to work your bent minnow and you start to pick up fish, you'll get tuned into whatever that leader length is and you'll do the action that makes the bent minnow catch the fish. If you're using a 3-foot leader 1 minute and a 10-foot leader the next minute, you're all arse about. You never get a real tune in on it. So it's pretty important. I can tell you one story about the bent minnow which I love telling, and if Righty was here I'd be even keener on telling it. We went down there at Cooter earlier this year and we wanted to have a go on the bent minnow on the surface because Righty fancies himself with the bent minnow and he's actually good at fishing it. But anyway, it ended up 14 zip my way on the bent minnow. And Righty's looking at it going, what have you done to that bloody bent minnow? I said, honestly, Righty, it's a stock standard. He said, oh no, nothing will be stock standard. What have you done to that bloody bent minnow? I said, nothing, which I hadn't. But I kept teasing him as though I had, but I hadn't done anything. But at the end of the day, the only thing that it was, and I didn't know really, at the start I thought it was because his leader was a bit weird, because the bent minnow wouldn't dig in. It was just sliding across the top. And I thought, well, that must be what Righty wants to do, and he's caught plenty of fish on bent minnows. I know he has. He kicks my bum most times we go. But I wasn't too worried about it. I thought, well, you know, when it goes your way, you've got to make the best of it. So I got him a bit rattled, which was good. But at the end of the day, we figured it out. It was as simple as simple. All he did was change the hooks on the bent minnow to non-original bent minnow hooks, and they were a smaller one, and the thing was just floating too high and it wouldn't dig in. That simple. But it was 14 zip before he figured it out. And I've got to tell you, he put it away when he figured it out, put another new bent minnow on, and he got one first cast. And when something like that happens, like, as I say, he's a better bream fisherman than I am, and if I start kicking his bum, something is wrong. You know something's wrong. But it just took a fair while for him to figure out what it was. Plus I had him a bit decoyed, because he thought I'd done something different to it when he had. He'd modified his bent minnow without meaning to, and mine was stock standard. So, look, that's about the only time I'll put up with a clip, and I really should get around to working out a clip that works better so I can tie it to that. What about on the Vibes? Well, that one's got an actual wire attachment that I made. That's just a homemade Vibe. But quite often with the Vibes I make, I don't have a split ring at all. I just tie it straight to the lure, which looks a bit bizarre, but when I make them, you make the Vibe so that it's pivoting around a certain point. So that point shouldn't really move much at all if you're in the sweet spot. So the fact that it's tied hard to the lure doesn't matter much because it's tied onto the lure, but the lure's wobbling from that spot. And that's just something else that can't go wrong, and it's something else that makes less noise when I put them on that way, because I don't like noisy Vibes. I reckon the noisy Vibes are not that good. And most companies are on it now, and they're starting to make more acrylic Vibes, and I think the acrylic Vibes have got a lot going for them. Not in every situation, but I think it is good because it's a little bit quieter. There might be reasons to do a loop knot on some things. Even if you look at that wriggler I've got on there, I don't want a loop knot because when I designed those 100mm wrigglers and the rest of the wriggler family, what I wanted was a lure with a steady body and a really wriggly tail. I didn't want a lot of body movement. I wanted it to look like either a worm or a prawn or something that was in control of itself, so that when it swam down, the body was pretty rigid and the tail was going like a critter, like something real. So I don't actually use them with a loop knot. I just tie them on hard to try and keep the body steady and make the tail go. That's basically it. I wouldn't say that there'd be occasions when it wouldn't help you to have a loop knot on something like that too, because fishing's not, we all try and make out that we know what we're talking about and it's a cut and dry situation, but it's not. So look, someone could come out in my boat, tie a loop knot on their squidgy wriggler and start kicking my bum. Well, the only thing I'll be doing is looking at it and going, okay, you've got a loop knot, I'll be tying one on there. That's the beauty of fishing with your mates and fishing with other people. And it doesn't matter if someone gets in your boat and they've only caught 4 fish. If they're kicking your butt, you know that there's something you've got to change. Don't be scared to change stuff. So yeah, I suppose I've made a long-winded answer to that question. It's a good question. Actually, I think we can hand stuff out, can't we, like that? If you want to, I don't know what the good of that is, but anyway, I'll give it a drink. But anyway, I'm baying instructions, but that's a good question. Stuff like that's pretty useful. Anyone else got a question we can have a bit of fun with? It's good. Everyone knows everything. I can drive home, yeah.
You mentioned floating leader.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, right. Well, I'll show you a bit of it here. It is. That's a Bushy rod. That won't break. Well, I can untangle it off this bloody tackle box, but yep, I can. Okay, let's find you a bit of floating leader. Righty put me onto that. I didn't figure it out, but tough stuff too. That's just called silver thread. Most of the time I just use that Bushy leader for everything, but there's a couple of situations where the floating leader is pretty good. And look, it doesn't float as in a piece of cork, but a lot of the fluorocarbon stuff actively sinks, which is good for you in certain situations. I mean, when I'm rigging stuff straight through like that little hard body set up there, that's actually straight through fluorocarbon because I want it to be in the water. But with the floating minnows and some of the other plastics that we use, like the little flick baits work really well on the floating leader as well. That's not a lure we sell heaps of because it looks too basic, that flick bait, but I can tell you the biggest catches of bream that I've ever had have all been on that little flick bait. It's hard to believe. Some people I've gone fishing with didn't believe it, but they believe it now, eh? Yeah, Tom's a convert. But they don't look much, they just look like a piece of plastic. But when you apply a bit of rod tip action to them and dart them around and then they just sag over and look like a half-dead mullet, the bream eat them, and they eat them big time. Even this last comp, right, he only came 4th, but the last day it was a fairly tough comp at Cooter, and I got all his fish, or most of his fish, just on the 85mm flick bait, straight through 3 pound, no head on it, just an unweighted jig hook. And when the fishing was tough, he was just fishing the bushes and pulling them out from really shallow water, and with the floating leader. So yeah, I think the bream stuff's got to that stage where you're just really looking for little advantages everywhere you can. Like I don't go on comps anymore because all the young blokes are too good and they keep giving me a kicking, but I still can't help wanting to catch. I mean, if one bite's good, I reckon 50 of them's got to be better. So I'm always keen on trying to learn new stuff and getting a bit of an edge just to catch more fish, really. It's sort of what it's all about for me. If I thought I could kick the young blokes, I'd be going back in a comp, but I don't think it's going to happen. Someone else must have a question, yep?
Is there any trouble with boat noise and stuff like that?
With which?
What, boat noise when you're fishing for bream?
Boat noise. I'm half deaf, so I don't have a lot of trouble with boat noise, no, don't worry me. Look, it's been interesting actually when you talk about boat noise. I'm pretty sure now in the hard fish places, they're really waking up to electric motor noise. It doesn't mean I don't want an electric motor on my boat, but it means I certainly use it at less speed if I can help. I always keep it as low a speed as I can. And the other thing, I had some trouble with the wiring in the boat. I'm a 24-volt system on account of it gets flogged so hard. I've got a dud switch and whatever, so my electric motor was out of action for probably 3 weeks. And I'm doing a lot of more open water fishing at the moment, so it didn't bother me that much. I just went, oh well, I'll get it done, but I wasn't too stressed about it. But fishing for about 3 weeks without my electric motor, of course I was using the main motor a lot more for silly jobs like cruising along up to a snag and throwing in and manoeuvring yourself around a flat to get another drift and stuff like that. And you would imagine that starting your motor off is going to freak all the bream out for 100 miles, but it blew me away a bit because I'd be on a flat that's only that deep and it's not all that windy. You start the main motor, drive 30 feet to line up another drift, first cast you catch one. I'm tending to think now that, and the other part to that is a lot of the time I know already when I'm fishing places like Cooter at times, more often Bem River when I'm fishing in shallow water, maybe 5 feet, and I'm doing maybe 30 mile an hour in my boat and finding a patch of fish in the 5 feet, and then you just mark them really thick and turn the boat around, throw the vibe straight back in the bubble trail and get a hook up. I don't think they worry too much about that noise, but it makes sense to me because bream are pretty old fish. If you get one a kilo, it's probably 20 years plus. And for all that time, every time they hear a main motor going over their head, no one gets hurt, right? Everyone's happy. George is still there, Fred's still there, everyone's good. So that noise doesn't bother them. But you get a electric motor and George goes, wah! And, you know, the next day you hear that same Sam gets bloody hauled out of the water. I think they're starting to wake up, I really do. So I reckon the boat, that kind of boat noise, I reckon it doesn't bother them too much. So that's been pretty interesting the last while. And I know, talking to Roddy when he was in the Gippsland Lakes comp not all that long ago, he reckoned they were just amazingly spooky, and he'd be putting the electric on and pulling out from the bank a little bit, and he reckons he could see fish bow waves spooking out. They're in really shallow water, but they could see fish spooking out 40 metres away. And after a while, and Ian Miller was fishing with him, and they both reckoned dead set that just turning on the electric was too much coincidence. They were spooking from that distance. So, yeah, so boat noises, that's probably a good enough question to get another thingy, whatever that is. Drink bottle, you think? Yeah, good question. But yeah, the real answer is I don't know, but it's been interesting. Yeah, mucking around with it. Anyone else got a question? Must be another goodie, yep.
How important is UV nowadays then? Because all the sensors have what
Yeah, look, I suppose we're never going to know, but looking at what the Yanks have done and how important it is with their fish, I suppose first you've got to go and look at an actual bony fish, and they have got the receptors to see a hell of a lot of UV colours, which we don't. So it makes a bit of sense to me that if they've got receptors to look at it, it's probably means something to them. So I think it probably is, and looking at these lures, a lot of the good ones seem to have the UV, like some of the these things, whatever, chubbies and stuff. The good colours are really UV, and when you look at a wall of chubbies with the UV, it seems to be really noticeable that the ones that really good sellers have got a lot of UV in them. So we think it matters. And the other interesting part too is with this S factor that we all use, and it's not a gimmick, the S factor. I mean, we paid a fisheries biologist or scientist a lot of money to develop the stuff. It's pretty real. But we looked at that under the UV light, and it's actually pretty UV, isn't it, Chris? Like Chris is right onto that stuff for his dewies and whatever. And you reckon the lighter the stuff, the more UV? Well, don't mention that then. Don't definitely look for the lighter stuff. Got more UV. Sacked. Yeah. No, look, we think it probably does make a difference. We don't know how much difference, and we don't know at what times. Even the S factor. Basically, it's, I don't know what bullshit we have on the packet, but basically it's an absolute food thing. We're probably sacked again. Yeah, sacked again. It's an absolute food thing. So if bream and stuff are in a feeding mood, or snapper especially, if they're in a feeding mood, that S factor's gold. It turns them from maybe a looker to a definite biter. But in other situations where the bream are all, I find when they're all ganged up and they're in a spawning aggregation ready to go somewhere, you can find them on your sounder. You can put S factor on them. Doesn't mean you're going to get them straight away. That doesn't turn them from completely non-feeding to ravenous beasts. That doesn't happen. But if fish are feeding, that stuff's, it's gold. I mean, when we're using that booger technique, you know, I'm gooing it up about every 3 casts, and certainly I goo it up after every bream because it's just too noticeable. Again, when you're fishing with your mate and you're on a patch of fish, if you get it right, it's not one every half an hour, it's one every second cast. Sometimes it's one every cast. And if your mate's got 3 in a row and you haven't got one, you go, oh shit, I forgot to goo up. So you goo up and then you go clunk, you get one. So we know it's for real. It's not you know, well, I don't make any more money. Oh yeah, I do make more money if you buy it. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, it's really good stuff. No, look, it does really work, yeah. It works super good. But not all the time. That's how it is. Feeding fish works super. Snapper, it works diabolically good. You use it on the dewies? Was that? Don't use it on the dewies, do you? Well, I don't know what lies you've been telling because I wasn't here.
No, definitely use it on the dewies and the snapper, yeah.
Yeah, snapper, it makes heaps of difference. Yeah, it's good stuff.
So,
Yep.
the X factor of the packets and
Yep.
the X factor that's now out the tube, are they the same? Because there's been some talk about.
What do I tell them, truth or? Am I allowed to tell them the truth, or are we making some lie up there?
Hold it down a little bit. No, the S factor that you buy in the tube now is it's pretty much what the tournament grade is.
Yeah.
Bushy and I were pretty lucky. We got special S factor back in the day, but now all you guys get the same thing. So.
Yeah, and it's got UV in it, and it's all it was the stuff we got earlier was a little bit more powerful, but now they've decided to put the powerful stuff in the tubes. So yeah, that's as good as it gets, and it is good.
In days gone past, you would have noticed probably if you bought Squidgies a bit, some were dark, some were light. The QC control wasn't very good on it. Now, if you get a tube, every single one you'll notice it's a lighter colour, and it's a control ratio.
The lighter the colour, the more UVs in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing too is I've got an industrial size pot of it taped to my console on the boat. But I still, if I've got to get in Righty's boat or something, I just take these two boxes and a bunch of rods. So I have to, because I always try to rat as much of his as possible, but sometimes it gets a bit precious with it. So I've just.
You're putting it on your toaster once.
Oh yeah, it's good on the toast. Don't worry about it. I kept growing fins on the back, but I don't know. But I just chuck some in the top of the box, and I've got some light stuff, some dark stuff, and I'm not too fussed. I still have it there because I want to put it on, and I don't feel happy with the plastic throwing it out without some of that stuff on it. That's for sure, and especially the snappers. You really got to have it.
You can snap it at your toast.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
What do you prefer, leader?
Leader knot, yeah, look, for going onto your line or between line to leader. Yeah, well, that's a tricky one. It's not that tricky. I mean, everyone's got a different one, but there's no doubt the modified Slim Beauty is the best in my opinion because it tests the strongest and it's the easiest to tie. And I can show you how to do that if we've got I'll have some braid here and we can do it if anyone wants to have a look later. But I think it's got some other name now. Somebody's claimed it. I was going to call it the Slim Bushy, but anyway, I've been using it for a long time now, a few years. But all that I do with it, and I think someone else has claimed it now anyway, which makes sense. The Slim Beauty, you tie the figure of 8, you poke the thing through, you go 7 up, 7 back through the hole, pull it. It's a fantastic knot. But to tie it with a figure of 8 in a 3-pound leader or a 4-pound leader and a piece of 3-pound braid, that's too hard. But you don't have to do that. What we call the modified Slim Beauty or the Slim Bushy, whatever, you just put the two lines together and you use the actual mono leader, and all you do is a big loop like that, the same as what you do with a double uni, and you just go through 3 times, pull it, and then you've got the barrel knot round your braid, which is exactly the same as if you'd done the silly figure of 8, except you can do it that big, you can do it behind your back. It's so easy to tie. Then you stand on it. I'll show anyone who wants to have a look later when we finish the talk because I find it pretty important, and it's a brilliant knot, and it goes through your guides really well. I think it's the only one that's worth doing. You can use a double uni, but it's easy to tie, bulky, and weak as piss. Apart from that, it's terrific. Your all-bright knot, it's hard to tie, and you can catch 400 fish on an all-bright knot until you catch the one you really want that's a trophy, and then the all-bright knot shits itself, falls apart. Other than that, it's really good. And the reason for that is the all-bright knot goes through your guides a whole lot of times. It's got a blunt end, and it goes bang, 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 and eventually it goes like that. The which? The FG. FGs are not a bad knot on the big tackle, but I don't like tying them on the 3-pound braid and stuff like that. I reckon they're useless. And there's another knot we use now that I use instead of the FG, which I reckon is heaps better. It's called a strangler. It's a lot better knot. Similar type thing, but you don't need a bobbin to tie it, and you don't need as many wraps. But yeah, a lot of people like their FG knots. I just find them too time consuming to tie, and I don't really trust them. Every now and again one will go like that, and people go, oh yeah, well, you lose one every now and again. Well, that's not good enough. I don't like that. And perhaps it was the way they tied it, but in my opinion, if you can't tie a knot 100% all the time, it's a dud knot. You need an easy knot. And that modified Slim Beauty or light line Slim Beauty is an absolute cracker.
Just for light line?
Well, it's the same knot as for the heavy line, and you can tie the heavy one with the same way instead of having the figure of 8. But the figure of 8 makes sense in a heavy line because you can just do an easy heavy knot, heavy The heavy line, you can do the figure of 8 knot. You can poke the braid through it. It's not difficult, but it's nearly impossible when you're doing it with fiddle ass 3 pound braid. It's not right. So tying the normal Slim Beauty with the modified method is still fine. I just do that all the time anyway. I never do a figure of 8 and poke it through anymore because it's exactly the same. It turns into a barrel that wraps around your line. That's all you're looking for. But I reckon it's just unbeatable that knot. It's fantastic. Made a big difference. I mean, so many times over the years I've had people come on my boat with double unis and things and they look all right and I hook a tree and go like that and it just goes, and you go, hang on a minute, that's just not going to cut it. You're already dealing with things that are pretty fine. You haven't got a big margin for error, so you just don't want, you don't want things going wrong. Now, I'll have the chance to look stupid here because that's just come straight off the boat. That's got the modified Slim Beauty with 3 pound braid and 4 pound lead. Hang on to that, and we'll pull it and see if it goes bust, and if it does, I'm leaving now. But I don't think it's going to. Give that you might have to hang on the drag, I don't know what it's set at, but well, if it's my drag, it'll be set pretty hard. Right, I'll give it a decent pull. Oh, yeah, that knot's really good. Probably did break. But then again, you'll only ever get 3 pound out of it. Oh, actually, the knot's still there. There you go. Yeah, the braid went foot away, so, oops, that broke. But that broke. It's a great knot, yeah, use that all the time. No, it is a good knot. So I don't know why the braid broke, but the knot didn't. Okay, and the other part to that is just, I think the uni knot's really good just for tying a lure to a braid. Oh, line's broken in the middle. Oh, actually, that's 3 pound leader. I lied about that too. That's a bit of 3 pounds, so it probably just broke where it should. All right, what else are we talking about? Where was I?
We start making our own jig heads.
Yep.
What's your opinion on having them powder coated, coloured?
Coloured? I haven't really got an opinion. I mean, it might help you, it might not. I don't know. I know early days we had a lot of discussions when we made the Squidgy jig heads whether we should make them coloured, whether we should put eyes on them, whether we should make them look schmick like some of the other, fish-shaped jig heads, and we have made some. But our argument in the early days was we wanted to make them as inexpensive as possible because we wanted them to be disposable. It's no good having a jig head that looks fantastic and you've got a perch hole over there with big perch in it and snags everywhere and you go, oh no, I can't throw that in there. It's too expensive or too pretty or too whatever. You want to be able to go clunk, and if you do get smashed up in a snag, you just want to go in the box, grab another one, tie it on. You don't want to have a hissy fit about it. I don't know. I'm still thinking the same. I just think the grey lead works really well on the fish. I'm not so big on it. I mean, we do, fishing for our bigger fish. Chris, you probably use fish head type things, do you? Or?
No, I use a standard lead jig.
Yeah, look, they've just...
At the end of the day, we bait fish for years with a sinker.
Yeah.
Why would a lead head on the jig be?
Yeah. I think it doesn't put them off, and I think maybe even in some ways, all I know is it really works, so I don't want to mess with it, I suppose. But I wouldn't say there'd be times when it might help you. I know when I build these little, that's just a homemade little wooden lure, and I've got some with the really bright eyes like that one, if you want to have a look at that one. Some with the really bright eyes under some conditions certainly works really well, and that little homemade vibe, it's a black vibe, but it's got the really bright glowy eyes, so that works. So I'm sure a jig head tricked up wouldn't hurt you, but for the sake of being inexpensive and work really well, I just, I'm pretty happy with the basic lead ones.
What are your thoughts on the crab jigs?
The crab jigs, or the cranker crabs? Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Everyone catches the hell out of fish with them, yeah. Sheezy's brilliant effort making those, I reckon. Whoops. How's our insurance going? All right? The cranker crabs are great lures. They're very good. I suppose the only drawback with them is they're expensive, which they have to be because they're so good. And you can blow a whole lot of them. I heard one story, the boys went up, who was it, Steersy and a bloke he fished with, they went up on the Clarence and they were fishing deep reef on the Clarence exclusively with the cranker crabs, and they did really well. I think they came second. They used $700 worth of the crabs. And I'd say Steersy's probably looking after them, so how much that is retail, I got no idea. That was the word, $700 worth in 3 days. So yeah, the crabs work good, but you've got to put them where they count, and yeah, brilliant job though. I mean, I reckon they're really good looking things. They are crabs. I've got actually I could show you one here actually. I've got the, I wonder where it is now. Don't know where I put it. So I told you it had to be organised. Yeah, I was just going to give you a laugh. I've got the bushy crab. We won't be selling them anytime soon, but I've counterfeited a few of Steersy's crabs. But Steersy'd roll over laughing when he had a look at them. Don't worry about that. Okay, any more questions? Must be another question. Somebody? Yep.
We got, as in most places, along the river here, there's lots of trees as cover and places for Bream to hide and bass and all other sorts of things. What's your preferred way to attack that sort of situation, especially in the winter time?
Not with cranker crabs because you lose them. Yeah, look, snag fishing's probably something I do less of now than I used to. When we first started, we didn't do, well, I didn't anyway, know anything about open water fishing, and I didn't know what sounders were all about. I hated them. So I only used to fish snags, I guess, and maybe a lot of us have started on the snag fishing and moved on to other things as well. But I still like the snag fishing, it's good. But how you attack it, I mean, I think a couple of things. When you're barra fishing and you're snag fishing, one of the things that you learn after a while, especially with expensive lures and stuff, is don't throw into the sweet spot first go with the snags. Often there's fish that sit off the snags, and I find that heaps with bream and perch and bass. So your first shot should be maybe 5 feet out from the snag and give it a bit of a work. And if one's sitting out off it, if you hook them out off the snag, that's fantastic because you don't, it's harder to get them back in the snag. So the first couple of shots, you don't want to go to the honey spot. I mean, everyone knows where the honey spot's going to be. It's the hole right at the back of the snag where all the worst stuff's hanging over. That's where they're really going to be. But don't go for that first up. Have a couple of, shots out wide, and then get your shot right in. The other part to that is you really got to beef up your gear. This stuff we're talking about now, for snag fishing, you can forget it. I know some of the early comps, Righty and I went in, Hawkesbury and some of the other spots where we did all right in the early days. We were fishing wrigglers right in the heart of the really bad racks. Foster, for example, guys were losing a lot of tackle in Foster. We were using 12-pound braid and 15-pound leader and wrigglers and lock drag, because you just got to lock the drag. So if you're fishing snags or those real deep racks, that's the other part to it, is beef your gear up, because there's just not any point hooking them on 1 kilo stuff in there. So beef your gear up. Don't hit the honey spot first up. Then get right in the honey spot. A lot of times you can rig your gear weedless, which if I don't know what I did with that, I can show you. There's a couple of easy ways to do it. You can actually modify your lures. I know Chris Cleaver and Chris Wright both, tend to chop the lures a little bit thinner when they're using them weedless, but you just get your jig head. It's going to be a bit hard to see from the back, but you just go straight in the nose of the lure, point it downwards like that, and you go just through the nose. Then you go down like that, starts sticking out. Then you just turn the whole thing around and bring it back up like that so that it's sticking out through there. So you can just feel it, and then you push it back so you just can't feel it. And it's a bit arse for elbow. After all the times we say rig your plastic straight, that's still reasonably straight. It won't swim 100% on a fast pull, but when you flick that right back, you can flick it over 3 logs, you can throw it right at the back of the snag and then you can crawl it back over everything, and it won't hook up, or rarely. And when you get the flick on the line, you've got to strike pretty hard, a bit like fishing for bass, the bass guys you see on the tournaments. You've got to hit it pretty hard so that it slides out that final bit and pins them. So that's one easy way to do it. There's other ways, but that is a really good comp technique when, second day in a comp, when things are getting tough, you can throw that stuff weedless right in the back of the snags. You're still likely to pull a good one. So that's a few things I do with the snags. Nothing probably different to what you do. You got other stuff? Any other tricks, Chris?
Well, I like keeping it myself.
Good on you. Yeah, that's good. No, he's been really.
I might take 2 more questions if there's any more, and then we'll do a bit of a draw and see if you guys can't win some stuff.
No, another couple.
No one?
You mentioned
Anything on the Deweys before we finish up?
I've got one about flathead.
Yep.
There you go.
During the winter,
Have you found it better to go to a smaller profile size?
No.
I'm afraid this one a big E, I reckon.
No, I just go, all you're looking for is a shallow water and mud bottom, and darker the bottom the better, because it holds the sun better, and you'll find them all stacked in there somewhere in that much water. And a lot of times the real big puppies are there. I'm not probably clever enough to know whether you need slimmer lures or fatter lures, but I just go for shallow running lures and go in those places in the winter where I know they're going to be sitting. And if you fish your own, spots for long enough, you're going to know where the big ones lie in the winter. Well, I was the other day actually on that gear there. I had a 10-pound plus flatty come out and eat that lure. It was pretty funny because it's got 1 kilo on it. I mean, this much water trying to catch a bream. And you just see this huge cloud of dust and it's gone clunk. You just feel it go clunk. And I just turned around to my mate and said, we're going to be here for a while. This is not going to be good. And the thing swam about 40 metres and sat on the bottom. I couldn't even shift it. We had to go right over to it and poke it. And then it took off and spat the lure out, which was lucky because I probably wouldn't have got the lure back. Yeah, I just poked it with a rod. It just sat down. My boat could hardly float. It was that shallow.
That's how you get all your fish, you poke them.
Yeah, poke 'em. Just poke 'em. Well, what are you going to do? I should have poked it with a landing net probably instead I caught it, but yeah, no, it just sat there with the 1 kilo on that wibbly little bushy rod. It wouldn't go. Well, one more question. No.